What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is me, Jello the Casual Card Gamer, and today we are going over a quick, fun budget deck that can be pretty tanky, and yeah, let's just get straight into it. So first things first, of course, starter. I like Tap the Hyper, just because the art looks a lot better, in my opinion, compared to the Slingshot hero. So, yeah, just tap the Hyper. Next, we run 4 copies of Spinning Valiant. His first ability is all units can only attack the Vanguard. At first glance, this kind of seems weird because it forces the game to be a lot shorter because everything is forced to attack the Vanguard. But we'll see more and more why this blanket protection against attacks is really good for the deck. And his second ability is when it attacks, if your front row has 4 or more units, until end of turn, he gets plus 10k, then counterblast 4 for the rest of the turn as well. Your opponent has to call 3 cards from their hand every time they guard. So usually, if not all the time, Spinning Valiant is the first attack of your turn if you are opening with his ability, because you want to maximize the number of attacks that you can abuse your opponent under the 3-card guard rule. On other turns, it's fine to attack with a couple of other things first, and then to go on with Spinning Valiant a little bit later if the numbers call for it. But again, when you're on Counterblast 4 kind of turn, he is the first one to start the fist fighting. Next, we run 4 copies of Girly Dolly. Girly Dolly is the MVP of this deck, because from Vanguard or Rearguard, if you have 5 or more hero units on your Rearguard circles, all of your Guardians get plus 10k. So this does stack per copy on the field. I like to have mine at the bottom, just so that they are a little harder to get to. Even with Spinning Valiant, there are a lot more things I've found that retire front row than they do back row. So good to have them in the back here, and as long as you have stuff on the other parts of your field, then you're looking at plus 30 to plus 40k for each card you call down to guard during your opponent's turn. So that's how this deck stays alive. Even at plus 20, you're still pretty good. You could probably transfer this into a 12k lane, and with some of the other cards that we'll be going over very soon, this can still force a couple of cards out of your opponent's hand on a Spinning Valiant turn. So that is Girly Dolly. Next, we run 2 copies of Visored Ashura. He does not get the benefits of some of the other cards in this deck, but what he does do is restand himself to attack again as a rearguard once per turn, and if your opponent's at 5 damage and you Spinning Valiant them, then this card is 6 cards from your opponent's hand. The only thing that can counter him is intercepts. That is kind of one of the weaknesses of this, but I usually put my triggers into this, and it's normally on an axle circle, so it is a bit bigger, so it is a little bit more trigger proof most of the time, but still pretty good to have, even if it doesn't get the benefits of the next card that we run, which is 2 copies of Miss Splendor. Splendor's abilities are from Vanguard or Rearguard, and when your hero attacks until the end of that battle, your opponent cannot intercept, and if you have more Rearguards than your opponent, the unit that attacked gets plus 3k. So she does help. If you are at full field, in most matchups, you will have the more Rearguards than your opponent part down pretty easily. The only time where it might be in contention is when you are playing against other Axel clans, but just for general demonstration's sake, we'll just assume that we are at the more rearguards than your opponent part of that skill. So Girly Dolly automatically becomes 15k when attacking, and your opponent can't intercept. The Visored Ashuras, I just put these here because there's nothing else in my head to put in, but it really does help. For example, if our field was like this, so we would attack with Valiant, he'd get the plus 10k and counterblast 4 to get the 3-card guard restriction for the rest of the turn, and Miss Splendor would activate to give another 3k, and then that would be 25 with no intercepts and 3-card guard. And that continues on for each of the other heroes and then the only time that doesn't happen, that wouldn't happen, is with the Visored Ashura up here. But yeah, that's just one way that I like to use Miss Splendor. Next card we run is 4 copies of Stylish Hustler. His abilities are pretty good. The first one is from Vanguard or Rearguard. Basically, whenever your other Rearguard is retired by an opponent's ability, you can Soul Blast 1 to return the retired card to hand. And a second ability is when he attacks, he gets 3k for every card in your damage zone. So he's a scaling beater, and he goes from 9 to 24. And when you're attacking with him and you have a Miss Splendor on the field, he becomes 27 with no intercepts. And if you're spinning valiantly that turn, then that's a 3-card guard as well. So that is Stylish Hustler. Next, to get resources back, we have 2 copies of Boomerang Thrower. I only run 2 of him because he only works if you only have 1 face up or 1 soul left, or 1 or less soul left. So the timing on it is a little difficult sometimes. His counter charge only gets you the first 2, which is all right. Warrior of Chakram. I like using Warrior of Chakram just for the extra guarding. If I have Girly Dollies on the field, then this thing's gigantic on its own. What its ability is from Rearguard. When your Vanguard is attacked, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets plus 5k shield until end of turn for each card in your damage zone. One of the drawbacks to it is that it comes off the field, so you have to make sure that you still have 5 heroes on the field after retiring this. But like I said, it can be a lifesaver. If anyone's looking for suggestions on what to change this to, I would also recommend trying out Spiral Crusher or something. The new Nova Grade 2 promo that's I believe only out in Japanese right now. But it's another restander to complement the other restander in this deck, which is 2 copies of Cool Hank. Cool Hank is pretty good. From Vanguard, I don't really like riding him because he's more useful as a rearguard, so I don't really care for the Soul Blast to draw 1. But his main ability, his main bread and butter, is when he attacks once per turn, you can discard a card from your hand to restand another rearguard. And if you're spinning valiantly, again, that is another 3 cards out of your opponent's hand required. I only do run 2 copies because this deck doesn't draw very well, and discarding from your hand is a bit costly, and the deck is also very counterblast heavy with spinning valiant, so I can't run kick typhoons efficiently with it. So until Spiral Crusher comes out, Cool Hank will have to do. But yeah, that's 2 copies of him. And then last but not least is to have fun with people sometimes. I play 1 copy of Armgaius. He's a grade 2, 3k base, 2 crit base alien dude. And yeah, that's all he is. And even if he's only 13, if your opponents have 4, he's an automatic 3 cards out of your opponent's hand if you're spinning valiantly. And if you have a Cool Hank out on the field, you can guarantee that this is 6 cards out of your opponent's hand. Of course, only if they don't have intercepts. If they have intercepts, then it becomes a bit of an issue. Moving on to the grade 1s, we run 2 copies of Rolling Extender. He's a 13k beater, but can only attack or boost attacks that attack Vanguards, which is alright, because as soon as you ride Spinning Valiant, you're forced to do that anyway, so that restriction is kind of, negated as soon as you ride grade 3. And having a 13k attacker or booster is always really good, because all you gotta do is get the bare minimum to get the 3 cards out of your opponent's hand every time you attack. So there he is, and he also does allow for very aggressive early game plays because he is 13k base. Next, we run 4 copies of Smash Smasher. Really good countercharger, a lot more efficient than Boomerang Thrower. The timing is just a little different, so it does slow the deck down just a tad. But again, it does get you more countercharge than Boomerang Thrower is able to. So his ability is when it attacks, you can counterblast 1, and he gets plus 5k for each card in your damage zone until the end of that battle. So he's a scaling beater for a counterblast, and at the end of the turn, if you have a grade 3 hero Vanguard, then you can put him into your soul and he countercharges. So he's better than Boomerang Thrower in both counter charging and soul charging, which is why we run 4 copies of him, which is really, really good. It's really nice that he's a common. It really helps this deck out, and it really helped me out because he was very, very, very affordable when I got him, and he probably still is very, very affordable. And anyway, moving on to our ride targets, we have 2 copies of Spin Kid. So his ability is, when ridden from a grade 0, reveal a spinning Valiant from your hand and deal 1 damage to both yourself and to your opponent. I don't really know how I feel about riding it going first. It feels a little weird to kind of stick my neck out open and let my opponent put me to 2 very quickly. I would say that this is more efficient in terms of getting your opponent to higher damage early going second, but going first I wouldn't recommend riding it, which is why I only run 2 copies of him, because it doesn't do anything else. So once you ride another grade 1, then he doesn't do anything for the rest of the game besides guard or be put into soul with the next card that we run, which is 2 copies of Riser Custom. So first ability, act once per turn, put a card from your hand into your soul, and this unit can attack on your first turn even if you went first. So this is kind of going first ride target, and this is my going second ride target, so I can still do damage to my opponent and so that I can do extra damage to my opponent. And the second ability is auto. When your rear guard in the same column as this unit stands, you can stand this unit with it. So it just a little help for restanding lanes in terms of power. And that is it for the grade 1s. Yeah, but as you can probably tell, I usually have girly dollies in the back row anyway, so that second ability isn't used very often anymore. I put it in there with a certain intention, and the play style of the deck deviated from that intention, but it still works really well in terms of riding as a vanguard, so that's why I keep them there. As for the triggers, we run 6 crit, 6 draw, and 4 heal. I am thinking of trying 4 crit, 4 front, 4 draw, and then 4 heals, but I'll have to see. Most of the time, the main weakness of this deck really is defensive triggers early if you are spinning valiantly, because again, if your units aren't at least 10 guards before a defensive trigger, then it does become difficult to push end games on those turns if your opponent has intercepts. Other than that, deck does play really well by taking damage to the face. You have Stylish Hustlers that can swing 12 to 15 grade 2 turn depending on how much damage you've taken turns before. And then as soon as you hit Spinning Valiant, those things are untouchable unless your opponent can retire, which not all clans have access to, so that's a good thing to watch out for. There are other things that interact with your field that I know exist in the game, but at least there is a protection against the most common one, which I found is retire. So that is it for Spinning Valiant. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts and comments down in the comment section, and I will get to them. If you have any questions, let me know as well, and maybe I'll do an AMA on this deck and maybe all the decks that I do deck profiles for in the future, just so that you know, we can have a little discussion and I get to talk a little bit more about these decks, because I really like playing them. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, and tell your friends if you think that they'll enjoy what we got going on, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.